Um, Good evening. My name is Tim Nugent, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about Hungarian food and sort of its in history and where it is and where it's coming and where I think it may be going. I'll just give you a little bit of background if I can. I started cooking, I was 13. I had to cook one meal a week for the family and the shopping and all these things. It was a way, I think, because I had slight attention problems to get me to sort of move and do things to learn about that. And I really fell in love with food and cooking, and both my parents very good cooks. And then I cooked professionally in France for 5 years and went to a very special school there and was able to work with amazing chefs. This was a long time ago, but it really cemented the sort of love of food that I have. And whenever I travel, and I try and travel as much as I can, because I figure we're all going around this little blue planet once, and we should see as much of it as we can. And I think a good way to connect with any place is either through food or music, and I try and do both. So with that said, this is a little sort of romp through Hungarian food, and I'm sure some of the dates will be not exactly correct, and I know that's important, and I apologize in advance. The errors are mine, or Wikipedia's that I've gone through and do things, so we'll go through. So basically, this is what we're going to kind of talk about, as I mentioned. And I learned an expression that when you ask somebody Hungarian, where are you from? And they say, well, my grandfather was born, and they go back to Adam and Eve. And that I promise I won't go back to Adam and Eve tonight with this. We'll look at sort of the basic sort of prehistory of what was happening and where things were. And I want to talk about Central Europe as much as I can, because the definition of the nation states has come much, much later. And there's been a lot of cross-pollinization within the area and within history, which is one of the things that for me makes Hungary a unique place. It's been an amazing crossroads because of the two major rivers, the Tisza and the Duna, coming through. So that's been, and obviously different invasions and different things have helped to do that. So we'll look at that, and then we'll take a brief look at some through the Middle Ages, and we'll look at some of the main basic staple dishes that are sort of the pillars of Hungarian food and where they come from and maybe why a little bit, and things that have been lost. I mean, one of the things that we'll look at is pre-800, ginger and black peppercorns and Sichuan peppercorns were used very much through Silk Road travel. And I came across a cookbook today, which I can't read, unfortunately, but it's recipes of our ancestors. And it talks about ginger, and it talks about things that many Hungarians have lost. It'll be interesting to see what that is. I'll try and find the name of it, and those of you who speak Hungarian, that might be interesting for you to look through. We'll look at sort of the early modern age, and then World War II and the Soviet occupation, which was, I think, a really important time for things to happen here, even though it was a horrible time. And then the Third Republic and what's happening and the explosion of the future and that. I mean, there have been a few major ones, but that's kind of where we're going to go through in a gentle way. So I promised I wouldn't go back to Adam and Eve. We're only going to go back 5.3 million years, which is the area which is the Carpathian, Kárpát-medence, Pannonian Basin. And you had a sea here that is essentially dried up. And what's phenomenal about it drying up is that it left behind incredibly rich mineral deposits and soils and salt deposits. And there's amazing salt in the region. And I've just discovered here in Budapest, near the Fővámtér there, the big piazza, there's a salt cellar you can go into. And you can sit and read your newspaper. And it's just an interesting thing. So that sort of came through. And this created certain boundaries. The Alps, the Carpathian Mountains, the Duna, the Tisza rivers were all for trade and boundaries, and kind of cemented an area geographically together as people migrated through it. So that's my Adam and Eve joke. The Carpathian Basin, we can sort of look at, see where things are, but all of this is that it was essentially all one area for a very, very long time, and the split up of the nation states, and then of course the split up of 1918 and how things changed. I shouldn't inject politics in here. Well, Hungarians don't like to call it the Pannonia because only a small part of it was occupied by the Romans. Otherwise, that's why they call it the Kárpát-medence. Yeah, good for you. Okay. Yes. No, okay. So basically, nomads, horses, cattle, sheep, and rivers of fish. There's no real seafood things, and this was, because people were nomads, this was gold. The bogrács was the most important thing in any herd and things. And I've been with friends who have bogrács that were their great-grandparents, that come down through families. And it's an important piece to think about, because there was no, since you were moving, you needed to be able to put it on your horse, move through it, and stop and create a fire and leave quickly if you needed to. So these were important ways. And I don't think it's necessarily unique to the area, but it happened a lot in that. The main foods, I'm speaking to Hungarians now, so it's sort of gulyás from the word gulya, shepherd, herdsman, and cured meats, horse meat. I mean, the original in Europe in the 18th century, when they began to really prescribe steak tartare, was always horse meat, because it's very, very lean and very high in iron. It was for people who were anemic. Cow, obviously, sheep cheeses. They would gather grains, river fishes, and any wild game that they could hunt. I think that's pretty basic, is what they do. But again, this is the key to many things. There are different sized ones, and you look at them now. But if you can get your hands on an old cast iron one that weighs 35 kilos, do. That's my two cents. So Árpád came basically organizing what is the Central European basin through St. Stephen, which was the original of Esztergom and the Catholic Church, and where that was. And there began a real settlement of an area of less nomadic movement, and more things around the Catholic Church where there was a more agrarian type of lifestyle, which behooved the Church for a lot of reasons, because they could keep and control their souls that they were trying to take care of. It stabilized it. Millet, barley, tönköly, which is a spelt, dingler, hulled wheat. Now, again, you probably all know this because you're from here, but in America, you have no idea what tönköly is. And I was going to recommend, if you don't know what it is, go out to a bakery and just get one of those little tönköly roasts. It's a different chewiness, there's a different consistency in the wheat, and it's absolutely delicious. So I like that. Rye buckwheat breads, cheeses, cured meats, river fishes, game, those kinds of things proceeded through the Middle Ages. And there's no real, except for this book that I happened to look at today that I couldn't translate, and even people who are Hungarian, I mean, my girlfriend looked at it and was reading it and had a tough time reading it because it was before Hungarian was sort of normalized, so the expressions, the way things were spelled are different to go back, but it's certainly something I would like to spend more time understanding, because it was an end cross point of the Silk Road and where things were coming through. So that's basically what happened around that time. It gets more interesting. The medieval kings, after sort of 1100, enjoyed a close connection with Italy, the Sicilian courts. Matthias is essentially the last of the medieval kingdom. Married Beatrice the third, I think she was. That was his third wife, Beatrice of Naples, and that began to solidify what is Hungary, and that it was a more evolved cuisine than those around it, because it used some of the Mediterranean influences. Again, all of this, we have to remember, is before the arrival of the New World explosion, which changed the planet. I mean, it changed China, it changed Europe, it changed everywhere what happened. And people don't think about that. And, we think about, well, there's Hungarian food, it's paprikash, well, that didn't exist then. It didn't exist. A potato didn't exist. Squash didn't exist. And so one of the things that's interesting is how you all brought this in here is going through. So basically, not long after Matthias died, basically Hungarians' preeminence in the world as a medieval power ended with the invasion of the Ottoman Empire and the Turks. And I had to struggle as I put this together because I kept getting lost in historical facts and so this is about food, and I'm trying to get there, and this isn't supposed to be a school lesson. So the Turkish occupation, 1541-1680, new foods arrived from the Orient or were reinfused from the Orient, like ginger, like black pepper. Coffee is introduced to Europe essentially. The New World foods arrived, and notably corn through Bulgaria because that's from the south, and things began to come through from the south, like pimenton, paprika, all came through. It was more than 100 years. It was already in Spain, it was already in Italy, and it was sort of coming through, and pockets of things began to come through the trade and things that were happening. One of the crossroads, one of the things that kept Hungarian food simple, and I say simple in the sense that there wasn't a lot of different kinds of things, is that about 50% of the population was killed by the Ottoman Empire and the occupation, and most of those people who were killed were upper middle class, upper class, urbanized people who had some idea and sophistication as to what was happening, and trade and things coming through. And they were essentially wiped out because those are the ones that begin to infuse the ideas of revolution into the peasantry historically, how that works. So those who were left behind were in small villages. They paid huge taxes to stay alive, and they were basically put on a kind of starvation level of the very, very simple foods, and potatoes had come in, and that sort of saved a lot of things the way it did in other parts of the world. A funny note, there's a German cookbook that came out in 1581, Einmilch cookbook by Marcus Rumpold. What's interesting is that it was a marvel for cooking and the printing press and that happening that it came out. Most people don't know that he was Hungarian, and that many, many dishes in that book are Hungarian dishes. So the first cookbook of the codification of Hungarian food are in this book from 1581 in Germany. I'm going to find it because I collect cookbooks. It's something that's really important to me, even if I can't read a word of it. That's a different thing. As awful as the Turkish occupation was, it brought in a huge amount of foods and things. And if you look at, people forget, because it's been a part of everything, but every one of these things came from what we call the New World. Corn, potato, tomato, and funnily enough, in this, I forgot to put this one in yellow. But most of the words here, from what I understand, in Hungarian, come from the Turkish. So that there was an infusion of language into the area and into the Hungarian language through the Turkish things. That's a thing. But it's amazing to think, and that's why it's so hard to understand what were people eating before this was so plentiful? And you think about it, how could we not have had potatoes until essentially 450 years ago, 500 years? I mean, it's astounding to me anyway. And I would call this probably the greatest food transformation and exploration basically in the history of humanity was that discovery of them and bringing back these things. I mean, it changed Europe, it changed China. The chili pepper, it just didn't exist. Nobody, people use the Sichuan peppercorn in China, which is looks kind of as a reddish black. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a reddish black, and you chew it, and it's a little bit spicy, but it numbs your tongue too. It's a completely different kind of spice. Very interesting, great food to cook with, but not a chili pepper. So if we look basically doing a kind of the Habsburg came through and did their thing in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and I hadn't realized that the Austro-Hungarian for me was forever. It was only about 50 years. Because of the Turks basically killing off 50% of the population and the educated people, when the Habsburgs came in to take over essentially and make it all feudal and lands and farming, the food was Germanized. Everything was Germanized. Everything was done with German style, German this, German that. It was very Germanized. And the Hungarian cuisine vanished into the peasant countryside. The Boglás, the thing. I mean, and that's one of the things that has kept this place so pure from a food perspective, from a lot of things, is that a lot of times in history, people came in and the Hungarians were put to sleep in a way. They were from a cultural development. They weren't allowed to do things because it's a crossroads, because of that. So that's an interesting point we'll get back to as we look at some of the dishes that we're going to look at. And then the Turkish influences remain, I think, of course, because of the New World, coffee, the spices, those kinds of things. I think that once people got a taste for spice, it's an addictive quality. The properties of the chili pepper are addictive, and you can have a chili pepper that's very, very hot, and you're savaged by it, and then 2 minutes later, I'll go back again and have it, because you develop a taste, because it releases endorphins, it creates a kind of euphoria that you get through beyond some of the pain that happens. Essentially, one of the things that the Austro-Hungarian Empire did is it enabled to take food from the entire region. Again, we're now no longer talking about the individual nation states that we look at today, and take the best of them and create a kind of umbrella cuisine. And Buda became an absolute center of baking and pastry because of the proximity to the wheat fields, because of the proximity to the Pustan around, and then getting things to the Viennese court. And everything was always put together to serve the Viennese court. And that's the way things were then. In some cases now. So 1918, 1989, a period of slumber. Trianon dismantled the Austro-Hungarian Empire. One of the interesting things that happened is as the nation states asserted their independence, they reached back into their countrysides of their area and brought back things that were important. So Hungary, at that point in time, elevated the gulyás to an iconic. It's the great cowboy myth. It's the gaucho, and the gaucho and the cowboy and the herdsman in Hungary. It's a very short period of time that actually happened when things were working, and so that was happening. And so that was an interesting period, I think, between 1918 and 1934, 1935, as they began to do that. And then, of course, the horror of World War II came. One of the things about the region is that there were a lot of large ethnic minorities that were here and coexisted in some ways. And I read, as I was putting this together, that when the Turks had come in, they allowed gypsies to come in because they knew about the Turkish armaments and the Turkish guns, and they brought in the gypsies into this region to help them defeat the Turks and the armies and the kind of weaponry that they had. So that's a thing. You had a large Jewish community of different tribes of Jewish populations, and so you had a lot of different foods that were mixed together, and then bits and pieces were taken out. And then World War II did what it did, and the Soviet occupation, obviously, I don't say Russian because I don't consider what the Soviet Union did as Russian. I think it was a horrific, that's more politics, it's food, sorry. So the Third Republic till now, end of communism, opening to the West, a return of a new generation of entrepreneurs. I mean, I know chefs and people, young cooks who could have left and worked anywhere in the world, but they say there are things happening here. And when I got here 4.5 years ago, the energy around food was extraordinary. New restaurants were opening, people were trying to do new things. 2 years ago, a Hungarian won the Bocuse d'Or, which is a huge. I worked in Bocuse d'Or competitions for chefs, as a little lowly cook, sort of chopping onions and doing things. And it's a really intense thing, and that the young man won it is extraordinary. And my prediction is that within 2 years, because of this man, we will see the first 2 Michelin star restaurant in Budapest, which will essentially change the face of how the world takes Budapest seriously from a culinary perspective. If you have 1 Michelin star, it's worth going to the restaurant. If you have 2, it's worth, if you're there, to make a trip to that restaurant. If you get 3 Michelin stars, it's worth flying anywhere in the world to get to that restaurant. And there was a restaurant, I can't remember the name of the street, where Lulu was on. Székely Mihály, which is right off of Király. There was a restaurant called Lulu. It was a kind of French gastronomic kind of place, and it closed about 1.5 years ago. But this man is taking it over. And Michelin star ratings are interesting because it isn't just about the food. It's about the seats, the space of the bathroom. They measure, they look at everything. And this restaurant, I think, was built to house a Michelin star cuisine. And you now have someone who is at that level. So I would say that once he opens what was Lulu, who knows what he'll call it, I think he may go directly to 2 Michelin stars, because he's an incredibly talented man, and he inspires a following of people who work for him in the what's the piazza where he's got the place? Horlutza, in that piazza. You can go and sit in his cafe. You got to make a reservation, and it's a really nice experience. And if he's able to bring that level of food into this kind of place, I think that and that's really the beginning. Because once people see, when I got here, there were 2 Michelin star restaurants, 1 Michelin star restaurants. There are now 4. I think maybe a 5th. I can't remember if there's a 5th. I think for sure 4. So that's changing. As soon as you get a 2, things are really going to start changing. If you get a 3, it's going to open up the things. And one of the amazing things about now, and why I was so excited to be here, is that I really felt an energy in Budapest and in Hungary of saying we can shake off this mantle of these different things, and especially the past 60, 70 years, and move forward, because Hungarians are really smart people, and it's an interesting place to be. So it made me really want to stay here, and that was a choice. So we go back to paprika, chili peppers. Hungarians have become some of the best pepper hybridists in the world. Through one of the peppers was the discovery of vitamin C. Not the crystallization of vitamin C, but the benefits of vitamin C and what that was. Basically, if there were more of you who weren't Hungarian, this wouldn't be, it might be a surprise that, in the morning you've got peppers and fat and zsír and onion, but you have to have a pepper, and it's spicy, and it's a great way to go. With a little pálinka is always nice. So it's a staple, but one forgets it didn't arrive here until probably about 1650, 1700, maybe even 1750. So going back and through as it came up through things. So it's an interesting thing. I wanted to note that if anybody has a comment or a question, feel free to interrupt me with this, because we're few, we can have a discussion about it, and it doesn't just have to be me going yap, 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 yap. No, really, I mean, it's a thing. So Hungarians can't live, and that's one of the things that I enjoyed coming here. I was sort of adopted by a family, and breakfast every morning was kolbász and onion and fresh garlic that we pulled up from and it was awesome. Absolutely, I mean, it's a good, strong breakfast, good zsír, and that's good. So anyway, paprika, chili peppers, and then the pimentón, which comes from the bell pepper, which is where you get your sweet and your hot, which is the powder, which creates all of that. This sort of goes into, in Spanish, it had been known for a while, since the beginning of the 16th century, when they brought these peppers back, because they were the first ones to touch this. The Spanish and the Portuguese were the first to touch it. So originated in Mexico, like all the chili peppers, like most of the great things in the world. Originated in Mexico. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico and cooked there, and there's a joke about Mexico that I won't tell, but maybe afterwards. Okay, so this is good. So one of the things that I found out when I got here is talking about lecho. And lecho, you think so, and I like to start trouble. I'm a troublemaker. It's fun to have a discussion, and I would innocently ask at a dinner party. So we'd be having drinks, and it's great, and haha. I said, so what is this lecho? I don't understand. What is this lecho? And people say, lecho, it's easy. It's tomato, it's onion, it's this. And I said, well, okay, but do you peel the tomatoes? Oh, you have to peel the tomatoes. No, you can't peel them. And beginning these things. How do you cut the onion? This way. And I have a cooking school that in my apartment, and I give classes for things. And I gave a lecho class given a couple of lechos. One was to a bunch of Hungarians who looked at me like, you're going to teach about lecho. We're going to have this conversation. They sharpened their teeth and their knives, and it was fine. But I mean, here's the thing. It's lecho in Hungarian, lecho in Czech and Slovak, German is lecho, Polish, leco, Russian, I'm not going to pronounce it, Arabic, I won't. In Italy, peperonata, everybody has onions and peppers. So we should just not get so excited about it and just enjoy it as we can together. So basically what is lecho? Anyway. It's the Hungarian wax pepper, tomato, onion, lard, bacon fat, or salona, paprika powder, salt. That's the base. And you begin to ask questions. Well, what do you do with this and that? So battles begin. Do you add eggs? Do you add garlic? Sugar, kolbas, spicy peppers, black pepper? I mean, no, you can't possibly. One of the fun things about doing this class with a lot of Hungarians was they were all trying to jostle us, and I said, well, we're making enough lecho for 25 people. Let's split it up into 5-6 different pots, and your grandmother made it this way, well, let's make it that way. Let's see what it is. Let's look at it. And an area where people would always fight about things, they sort of got, this isn't bad. As long as we get beyond the idea of pride of what is God and it's mine and we created it. And as I said in the previous image, everybody has onions and peppers. Let's not get too excited about it because the Mexicans invented lecho. Let's be honest. That's, accompanied battles is bread, rice, potatoes, egg barley. I think egg barley is tarhanya, no? Tarhanya, I think so. Yes, yeah. Nöködli, spätzli are essentially the same thing, although Nöködli is a little bit bigger and fatter, and spätzli is a little bit finer, German, this and that. But I mean, it's in a company, people fight about it. And the more wine you have to drink, and the more people get passionate about it. The other thing, people are absolutely... I say, well, who makes the best hurka in Budapest? Where can I get the best hurka?
My father-in-law.
Well, absolutely, and it's a wonderful sort of thing. And one of the interesting things, and I didn't get into the whole hurka thing, one of the things that has happened in Hungary, in my experience, and in most places where I travel, is everybody thinks that they're the only ones who do this. So, you like hurka? We thought only Hungarians ate hurka. No, the reality is when a peasant killed a pig anywhere in the world, with whatever spices and things they had, they used that blood because that fed the family. And they used the nose, they used the tail, they used the this, they used the ass. It doesn't make any difference. And everybody does it. So it's made me feel much closer. Now, people do it different ways, and that's fine. So now we can look at more battles. How do you cut the onion? and I have sat and listened to a debate at a dinner table. Oh, you got to go this way. I mean, I love it. It's great fun. And then it's getting heated up when they slip into Hungarian and the tone goes up about that. That's really happening. So pepper, do you seed it or not? Tomato, peel or not? Do you use salona? Or do you use bacon? Or do you use lard? Or do you use an oil? What are the steps? What are the proportions? You name it. If there's a way to fight about it, it's a battle. And
use duck fat. That will send a whole bunch.
I'm sorry?
Use duck fat.
Oh my God!
That will send a whole bunch of Hungarians.
Of course. Now and then heresy, absolute heresy. I'll tell you what. I take lecho, cold, with a little bit of aspic, a little gelatin, with a poached egg on top. Look at this. There it is. There it is. Egg. No. But the thing is, think about it. It's a hot summer day. For lunch, your first course is a little thing of lecho, and a little poached egg on top, a little piece of crispy bread, like this. It goes through as a first course. It's delicious. I know it's heresy. I know I'm going to Hungarian hell for even mentioning it, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm already going there. So parsley is amazing. Eggplant and zucchini becomes ratatouille.
Yeah. But Hungarians will translate lecho without eggplant and zucchini as ratatouille to non-Hungarians. And I'll look at it and go, no, this is lecho.
Right. It's
different.
No, it's a big difference in what you do. And I mean, with an old ratatouille, I learned to make it where you cook each thing differently and separately, and then you mix it in, because the zucchini will fall apart before the eggplant will be fully cooked. And then once you've cooked everything together and put it all together, and put lots of olive oil and things like that, then you put it in the fridge for 2 days, and you don't touch it, because everything gets better. Even lecho gets better, unless you put egg in it, in 2 days. But do you reheat your lecho? No, you can't reheat. You have to eat it right there. You don't reheat. No, it's one of those things. So anyway, what is lecho? And that's what it is. It's one of the great sort of conversations that I love to have. This is a picture of a class, the lecho class. Yes?
I just for the lecho. There was an animation film, Pixar or Walt
Ratatouille.
Ratatouille. And it was translated into Hungary.
Lecho. That's great. Yeah. But the dish that the rat served the thing had eggplant and zucchini in it.
Of course.
Yeah.
They were red.
The title was lecho.
Yeah.
Lecho.
So this was the class, and people come, and you come to this big table, and we prepare and do things, and you come and you cook and you have fun. You bring wine, and it's just about fun and playing with food, because I think it's the best way to bring people together. If you look at a party, where does everybody always end up? The kitchen. So I put in a little kitchen I have a little bedroom in the apartment, and everything else is the kitchen, because I don't care. So this is how it sort of goes through, and somebody wanted to know. This girl, she said, my grandma fries the kolbas before to get the oils, and then we put that in, and people, what are you talking about? And it was a team building party for a company. And what was interesting is that it was delicious, and everybody agreed it was delicious, but everybody initially was sort of no. So it's kind of fun to sort of.
Yeah, mainly after when I turned out that she's from Transylvania.
Yeah. No.
Something completely different.
Oh yeah. We'll get to that. And again.
And the lecho is in Lithuania too. I saw a can or something else. And the rice same making chef.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of the. It's funny. I hadn't done all of my homework, and for this class, one of the things here, you can't read this, was to how to make a pilaf rice, and I give a recipe where you can't mess it up because with rice. But I was reading after now as I was putting this together that rice was only ever eaten by the very, very wealthy, because it's a huge amount. You didn't really cultivate it here because of the amount of water that it took and what it is. And so it would come from far away, and only the very wealthy could afford it. Like sugar was something that, until it began to creep down into a processed way. So that's my lecho story. The 4 pillars of Hungarian cooking, and soup. So because that's a completely different discussion. I say to people, well, I cook. If I think, do you know how to make soup? Because that's really important. And we go back to, and I really think that this is one of the absolute keys when people had to basically disappear into the countryside for the Ottoman Empire and disappeared. And I think you began to have these small villages of tribes, which essentially became tribes, that had their own recipes, that had their own ways of doing things, based upon probably something as simple as that's what was growing and we needed something to eat. And so guya is the herd, guya is the herd, gulyás is the herdsman, pörkölt, paprikás, tokány. Now tokány it's funny. I talked to someone who Hungarian had never heard of tokány because they didn't spend much time in Transylvania, and it's very much more of a Transylvanian product. And the meat isn't cubed; it's in sort of longer strips, and it's dried. And I meant to change that. I think it's takana in Romanian. I didn't find that time to fix it. But there is a Romanian dish where you put onions down and you put meat on top and a little bit of liquid, and then you cover it and cook it very, very slowly for a long time. You don't stir it, you don't do anything. It's in a very little bit of sauce. It's delicious. I think that's very similar to what tokány is, the Transylvanian pörkölt, and it's good. So főzőlek is something that was new to me when I got here as to what it was and how it is. And I can guess one of the things with cooking, which is kind of fun, is that I've been around enough so that I can look at what somebody's doing and I understand how it's made. And what I may get an ingredient here differently, but I can basically reproduce it. And this was very much when meat was scarcer. And what was happening, you take leftover things and put these, and the thickening with a roux with the bacon fats and things that were rendered, you would do that. And it's something that you don't sort of puree it, and usually you don't smash it down. It sort of cooks down the roux, and then it's topped with something, an egg, a little bit of pörkölt that might be left, something to add a little bit of that. So it's interesting. And then, soups. Hungarians are. Do you know how to make a soup? How's your húslevet? Well, it's okay. It's pretty, which is great. I mean, it's a good thing. Early soups, there were a lot of bread soups because of the breads and grains that put together, and that's they used to thicken a lot of soups with bread and dried bread and things like that. There are a million kinds of dumplings. I've just a few that I've written in. I have to remember to close that parenthesis. But that's the tarhonya it looks like a piece of barley. When I first tried it, I thought it was barley. I don't know, but it's a different kind of thing. It's wonderful to go through. So it's been fun to see what people do in different places and why. And I will certainly be spending as much time until you guys throw me out. Learning about what it is and what's happening. And my girlfriend met a man near Pécs who brought back essentially from extinction a red-legged chicken that didn't exist, and he sells them and will sell them to restaurants, but he's bringing things back to and this wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And that's what I mean by the energy and the entrepreneurship and things that are happening based upon having been put to sleep until 1989 and what's happened. One could argue, and I do, about China, because before I got here I was in China, that 1949 in China to the beginning of we'll call it the pseudo-capitalist revolution, that means China's going to take over the world and probably save the planet, as much as we're not going to like it. Probably will. If they hadn't been put to sleep during that time, the rampant, all-powerful American capitalism would have come over and just taken everything the way we have done and we've done with Africa in a lot of ways, to plunder all the resources. And so, in a way, had and this is pure speculation, had Hungary not essentially been put to sleep from 1918 to 1989, you would have been absolutely assimilated into the West and into the New World, and you would have lost a lot of these things. One of the most amazing things about Hungary is, one, your language has separated you from everybody, which is a gift. And that everybody that I've met has a connection to the countryside, to the primal food. So, have you been to a pig killing? To a pig killing? No? Have you been to a pig killing?
I don't like pig killings, to be honest.
No, but have you been? I'm not saying you have to watch it,
I
but
was taken as a child and I...
don't go back. Okay. Right.
I'm sorry.
But you have connections. So there's someone in the countryside that you can know, the jams, grandmothers, uncles, aunts, that are still part of that countryside, which is not the case in most major urban places now. Paris, and they don't know it. London, they don't know it. You can go out into the countryside, you can find it, but it's more of an industry rather than a family connection, which is much more of a soulful connection. And that's what you still have here. In 20 years, I think it'll be gone. And that's very sad. But, maybe not. There's hope. So anyway, the 4 pillars are, and basically we can go through this, and since you probably know this better than I do, it's much more of a soup. There's no flour. Originally, which I hadn't known, is that the meat was dried and flavored with the help of and packed into bagged sheep stomachs. And then all you had to do, you could transport it. So it was a way of transporting, so you could transport a lot of meat in your herd and in your nomadic ways using that. And I've cooked with inside sheep's bladders and inside pigeon bladders and things, and it makes a big difference. And it does, it's an airtight thing. Those bladders from sheep were also used for préservatif, for condoms, for sex. People who use it to not get pregnant. It was something that you would do. Earlier versions of the goulash didn't include paprika, of course, or potato, or any of these things, because it just didn't exist until the basically end of the 16th century. And now it's, as I said before, goulash is that nationalistic pride of the cowboy myth. Is that, and like the Argentine cowboy, and it's iconic in a way because it's freedom and independence. And in the United States, the cowboy was free, but it was only about 14 years until they put in barbed wire, and then that was the end of the driving of cattle. So that's goulash, and if there were more of you who had no idea, then I would sort of talk more about it, but I think that's sort of probably not necessary. So there are a lot of variations. And these are just things, the way you have variations in things. So some of the paprika, there's a ville marengo in French, which is a variation of things. And these are different ones that you can do and look up. And one of the goulash communism was the maverick brand of communism, what it was. So it's translated, really permeated into the culture and how that worked. And well, I think that's.
I don't know half of it.
But it's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't think that you're alone in not knowing that, because people don't. I mean, if you ask people in France, France knows everything about food and this and that, and you go back and people don't know what the garnishes are. They don't know what things were. They don't know how things used to be made and how because we're all going to Tesco. And we're all going to Lidl, and that's changing things, and that's something that one of the things is that more of you here go to the markets in Budapest. Go, they're amazing. They're amazing. You get good, the Lehel market. You've got the big piazza. You've got. I live round the corner from Rákóczi, and the Rákóczi piazza. It's a lovely little market. There are little things. Does it have the best of everything? No, but you can find pretty much what you want. And I try and always go to where the nenis and bachis are in the back to see what they're growing. And I pay a little bit more for it. Absolutely. But you find good things. Better eggs, better things, more flavor. I always push for go to the market. Go and explore with food, because you'll learn a lot. Even if you're from here, you'll learn a lot about where things are coming from. And some of the old nannies might be, they don't want to talk to you. But if you start to ask some of the questions, they'll start to talk to you, and you'll keep that connection going. And it's really important that we keep the connection to that. So, pörkort, Hungarian stew, boneless meat, paprika, some vegetables. It's much thicker. It's much more of what we would call a stew in English in England. They vary from region to region, tribe to tribe. Again, how do you make pörkort? Probably the same kind of discussions about lecho. No, you do it this way. When do you add the paprika? That's a good question. When do you add the paprika powder when you make your lecho?
After the onion, of course.
That's well.
Sure.
So you start the fat,
vegetarian, but yeah.
You weren't always vegetarian. When your grandmother cooked
Yeah,
you,
I use
fat, onion.
onion,
Okay.
and
and then,
Yes.
okay.
and maybe if it's a little bit overcooked.
But then it's bitter. Then it's, well, see, that depends what you like. So I understand why some people added it after they added the tomatoes. It would still cook, but the tomatoes would give water and you were never going to get the bitter taste. And if you're not careful, like many spices, if you burn that paprika, you basically need to start again. Curry's the same way. You do onions translucent in some sort of fat. Don't let the onions brown. You put your curry powder, your spices in. You let those cook for a couple of minutes to bring out the flavors in them. It's like toasting the spices. And then you continue with the layering and layering of flavors, what you want the base. So that, I mean, a popular, one of the things I got to Hungary and somebody said, come to this, try this. Haha, what is it? Well, I knew what it was. I didn't say anything. And it was pacal perkor, and it's delicious. And it's, oh, we thought only Hungarians ate pacal. No, but it's very common. I was in places in China where people would say, "You eat pig's ears?" Well, yeah, you eat everything. It's just, you don't throw it away. It feeds you. If you don't eat it, you die. I mean, it's literally, we eat so much meat now, based upon what things. I mean, it's astounding what we consume now. But anyway, so that's perkort and what it is, and there are endless variations. Now, paprika chicken, I don't need to go into these. Again, this was a beginner kind of thing. I didn't realize I would have. So, sweet paprika and that. Now, much more interesting to me is this last one. There was a French chef, Joseph Maréchal, who ended up working for Paul Esterhazy at the casino. And one of the things that the French do, and they're very good at doing, is they take what they would call snobbily, and I apologize, native dishes, and push them along a little bit and make them a little bit better. They did it with curry in India. They did it with this. They added cream. They wanted to mellow it out a little bit to not have the strength of things, probably because there was a lot of burning of paprika going on. So they needed to figure out how to solve that problem. So they lessened it with cream, and you do it with noodles, millet. I've had it with buckwheat. Buckwheat is arpa. Buckwheat, no, arpa. Is that millet?
No, buckwheat or millet.
No, millet is kölesh. Kölesh is millet. Buckwheat is arpa.
The Russian one, no.
Kasha.
Kasha, but no.
Hungarian one.
Anyway.
That would be good.
Yeah. Now this is my sort of joke. Hungarians hate this rumor about this because they invented everything. The Rubik's Cube, vitamin C, the ballpoint pen. And they did invent lots. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. Yeah. So anyway, but I actually do think that the paprikash and the cream added was done by this Joseph Maréchal at the higher level in society that brought things over. And in the World's Fair around that time... Thank you. Thank you. There was a renaissance of Hungarian food that took the world by storm for a while. It was Napoleon and the very wealthy and the nobility of Transylvania, which in some ways were the great keepers of Hungarian culture, the barons of that time. The greatest libraries in the world in Hungary at that time existed. Most of them were in Dutch because of the huge things. And when they came for the Hungarian barons in 39 and a little bit later going through, there are stories of entire train cars being filled with these information. There's a book. It's not the best written book, but it's an interesting book called Comrade Baron, and it's about the dismantling of, almost overnight, the Transylvanian aristocracy by the Soviets and the communists here to get rid of what had been centuries and centuries of keeping and storing information about food, about astronomy, about so many things. Like Matthias was a philosopher kind of king who embraced the Italian courts in the Renaissance. So anyway, that goes back to paprikash, and we look at that. Tolkány, translated in pörkölt, is strips of meat, not cubes. It's stewed on fried onion, so it sits on an onion that sort of comes up, very little liquid, almost never has paprika in it, lots and lots of black pepper. This is a really old recipe. I'll bet if we were to look back in old books, in old things, you'd find ginger in it too. And you'd find I'll bet you would find it. And ginger just disappeared. And that's something I wasn't able to find or delve into, because probably one would have to speak Hungarian in order to understand where and why that cutoff happened. Was it with the introduction of the New World foods and trying to phase out the power of that? Was it the Mongols who came, and then basically, was it 1242 or something like that when the Mongols, I don't remember, I think so, yeah. When they came through, and funnily enough, I read something that I thought was interesting, that probably the reason that the Mongols were stopped is there were 3 winters in a row that time that were unbelievably warm, and so nothing froze, and everything became mud fields, so they couldn't bring the horses and the cannons and the wagons across. Otherwise, probably all of Europe would have fallen to the Mongol hordes. So it's funny things that happen, like the cookbook, like that. I collect weird bits of information and things. But this is a good thing. Now, all right, we get to főzőleg. This is it for me. Now you're Hungary, you understand it. Főz, to cook, leg, which goes with it. Főzőleg basically means something created by cooking. Well, isn't that everything? Except for raw tomato salad. Hungarians love a good prefix. This is me trying to be funny with Hungarian stuff. So you always say what it is. So the bean cooked by something, this, that, whatever it is. And there are many, many different kinds. Cabbage, pepper, bell pepper, potatoes, sauerkraut. Funnily enough, what? No. That's good.
Yeah,
no?
I like it.
I mean, I'll tell you what's funny. The thing about főzőleg, and it took me a while to sort of think, why did I like it? It brought me back to kind of baby food. In a way, sort of bringing back kind of pap, but a vegetable pap that came through. Funnily enough, I don't see very much kale in it, and in this country. And the thing about green things or vegetables. So it's sticking with the roux. It's brought things through. Some you can put pörkölt, eggs, smoked sausage. We talked a little bit about that on top at the end as a little sort of little present, as opposed to, oh God, I'm going to eat this more like this. I was asked why didn't I include something like stuffed cabbage as a Hungarian dish, because everybody does stuffed cabbage. It's something you just, everybody in the world, and it's essentially the same everywhere, essentially.
Oh, that can be
Yeah.
fight.
There is
sure it is.
There is a főzőleg in Hungary, a mixture of peanut and carrot.
Peas.
Peas
And carrots, right?
And we call it finom főzőleg.
Finom főzőleg?
Which is delicious főzőleg,
Nice
or
főzőleg.
fine főzőleg,
Yeah.
nice főzőleg.
Finci főzőleg. Yes.
This is the name of this főzőleg.
Peas and carrots. Well, that's Gerber would probably be happy with
And I like
that
it.
name. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Nobody else.
I do.
Okay.
When I was in China, my brother said I'm like the Cantonese. I eat everything with legs, except for tables and chairs. Everything with wings, except for airplanes, and everything that swims, except for submarines. And look, the reality is, I try and push. I think if you can try everything at least twice. The first time it may be too freaky. Grasshoppers, worms, different things. And then, all right, get once. I can't figure it out. Try it a second time so you know what it is. Now you don't have to freak out. And then try it a third time. See, and most of the time, almost every single Hungarian I've given grasshoppers to that I bring back from Mexico, they're like little peanuts, little palinka, they're delicious. They're going to be the food of the future, so we should get used to it. We should remember that. So more about főzőleg. I won't go into that. Fish soups, again, almost exclusively river fish. It's one of the only things that I lament about being in Hungary is there's no good seafood, and that's hard for me because it's sort of cuts off. Well,
500 kilometers.
yeah, Barcelona. But basically, a court bouillon is you take all the trimmings of a fish that you filleted, you begin to boil it, you begin to create your layers of flavors. Again, almost always in something big in a pot, going through different variations depending on where you are. From Transylvania, from here, it's going to have the roe, the innards. I think it depends on how hungry you were as to what you would put in. If times were rich and the carp were fat, you would put just the fillet of the fish in, and the insides would go to the cats. That kept your grain stores from being filled with mice. I mean, it's a very practical kind of thing. And prior to paprika, I read that black pepper and ginger were used in fish, which makes sense. Very much an Asian thing. I mean, can you imagine going to a halas place, a fish soup place, and it not being red like that? People would say, well, that's only been around for a couple of 100 years. So specialties, sweet and savory. This is going to be boring because langos, fried dough with stuff on it. Breads, there's a rich tradition of grains of old times. We talked about dönköy, millet, barley, buckwheat. Desserts, the Turkish, Austrian, and Germanic influences, rétes, begli, Esterházy torta, and of course the famous, I'm sure we'll get to it very quickly. So langos, I tell people who come to visit, I take them to eat langos, and basically it's after we've been out drinking and this and that, and I said, have everything on it. Sour cream, garlic, cheese, just load up and enjoy what it is. Now there is a prostituted version with sweets only for German tourists, and nobody else would do it, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm sure. It's heaven for a hangover with beer and palinka, but you're all Hungarian, you know that, so nothing new there. So, funny enough, I could come back to this. This is a very famous, obviously, the Dobos torta, and Budapest became a pastry mecca, and they imported a lot of, there were French pastry cooks coming through Marshall's woman, and you can still go. Gerbeau still exists, so this is for people who wouldn't necessarily know, and you can go and have a really expensive hot chocolate there, and it's good, but it's really expensive. And the things it's something to do and to look at. And palacsinta crepes, is that Hungarian? No, everybody makes palacsinta, everybody makes lecho in a different way. I don't want to, like that. Puree of chestnuts, I've been making that in France, but still, it's just something that happens. There are heavier things that come through. Makos, gulba things. Makos came through because of the Turks. The poppy seed came through with the Turks, along with the poppy trade.
Is poppy seed that for the word. No, I'm just curious that as far as I know, you can buy poppy seed in pharmacies in Western Europe.
Really? You can buy them in France.
You can?
Sure.
Not in Asia, for sure.
No?
Canada, you can buy them.
You can't anywhere.
Oh no, you can buy poppy seed.
Yeah.
They're pretty well in the grocery stores.
They've probably been whatever, but I mean, yeah.
You can't grow
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, no, that's
but
right.
They're imported.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of my favorites is poppy seed. And then there's a Jewish dessert I didn't put in here, a flodny, which is just
Either love it or you hate it.
right. And it's but again, I think that probably came about when somebody when they were making the rétes or making the things, there was a little bit of makos, a little bit of apple, a little bit of dio, a little bit of this. We'll call it something this, and that was very much those kinds of things that came through. Happy accidents, I call them, which is kind of fun. Kifli, we all know, it's fine, it's easy. Solid crescent bread. The myth, it was made in 1683 to celebrate driving out the Turks, and we're going to eat the crescent because we won. The reality, it's been around since the 13th century, so let's not get to... And, I tell young tourists who are coming through, go into a place, get 4 kifli, buy some cheese, buy some onion, sit down, some tomato, just have that. Don't go to a McDonald's or something for breakfast. Just try and be more adventurous. So this is about people who aren't necessarily from here, places that I like. that are very traditionally Hungarian places. I don't know if you know, Pozsonyi Kis Vendéglő is a great Hungarian restaurant. And I don't think you can get much more Hungarian than this place. Nobody's correcting me, so.
I was going to say, it's very difficult to get into.
you got to call them a week in advance and reserve and go through. And I lived right across the street from it, and so they knew me, and they'd always squeeze me into a table or little things. Kiska Cook, which is just down the street, has been there since 1940. It's a little bit touristy. They've taken advantage of the things. They still have a really good duck and red cabbage and potatoes, and you can get good wines. A little bit pricey, but you can take someone who doesn't know it, and it's sort of that. I like the Rákóczi Piac Market, and I had lunch here today, and this is their menu for the day. It changes, and you can't necessarily read everything, but the menus, you got a choice of a soup, you got a choice of this, you buy bread on the side, a couple of pickles, a couple of things, and this is basic good stuff.
At Rákóczi?
Yeah. So when you're facing you're facing it, you go into the market, go into your right, and to the back, and there's a langos place or this and that, and there are 3 or 4 women in there, and they're just making all kinds of stuff. Is it the most sophisticated? No, it's really good comfort food, and I really like it. Ghetto Gulyás is a place, I have mixed feelings about it, but they do a good job of a modern kind of twist on the classic dishes. It's a little bit lighter. It's not huge portions. The prices are a little bit more, but it's gearing to that. They've got very nice wines, and I'm not even getting into the wines in Hungary because that's another discussion completely, and I'm probably not the most qualified. I like drinking it, but I don't know that much about it. So Ghetto Gulyás is on Veselényi. Klázalter. This place hasn't changed since the 1950s, and the guy still sits at the edge and what did you eat, and writes it up, and you have things, and it's good, honest food.
But he cooks in the morning.
Does he?
He's the cook.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I had a conversation with him. He cooks in the morning. He's like the head guy. He cooks, and then while everyone serves, he's the guy taking the money.
Take the money, yeah, and it's all done by hand. There's no anything.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't closed them down. There's a place if you get out a little bit, and it's a long day trip. But because it's 2 hours each way by train. But if you leave in the morning,
If I'm not right, from this restaurant, from the Kis restaurant, from the sous chef will be the
Sous chef
will be the European museum decor.
That's right. Absolutely. You're absolutely. And what's fun is like when I first came to Hungary, I was brought to Balaton Szemes because my friend had been inviting me to come, and I love it. It's beautiful. It's just anyway. But Kis, if you want to leave at 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, take a 2-hour train ride, sleep, whatever you want to do, walk around the Balaton a little bit, have a good fat lunch at Kis, and it's delicious. I mean, it's an expensive restaurant. It's high-end food, and then take the train back and have a nice nap when you're back, and you've had a nice day without doing these. And you can get there is a 2-hour. They fixed all the railway lines, so you don't have to take a bus and it is at Siófok or change here or do that. You can get it's 2 hours. You look at the thing in Mentrend, and you can see where you're going to go, and it's fine. There's a book that I've looked at, which is kind of fun. It's called Paprika, a Spicy Memoir from Hungary by this woman, and she talks a lot about the history of food and her love of it and how it works. So that's really basically the thing. So those kind of, and yes.
Something else.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not advice. I'm sure everybody tried it before. But if you go to a headfish.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah.
You're reborn.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
It's from my memory because I'm vegetarian.
You've said that. Are you a vegetarian by chance? Yeah. So anyway, these are places that I like. I'm sure you do.
No, I don't.
Well, why? Well, I mean,
Off the records.
Yeah. So this is me. If you want to send me an email, timdreamkitchen@gmail. I'm on Instagram as of 3 days ago because of Matthias behind you. I give cooking classes. I'm happy to put things together. Bachelorette parties, 8 people. I can organize entertainment for that, people to happen if you want. It's basically a place to have fun. It's a place to learn and to play. The format is you come at 6 o'clock. We talk about what we're going to cook till about 6:15. We cook till 9:15. Then we eat till 10. At 10, you're all welcome to leave in a nice way. Then you bring your own bottle of wine, and we generally will do a starter, a main course, 2 side dishes, and a dessert. And it varies. We do interesting things, and I've got a website that I'm putting together with more details as I ramp this up, so that people can sign up for classes and do those kinds of things. And obviously, if there are only 2 people, 3 people, it's not worth doing. I generally do about 8 people, and I don't do. 10. I'll take if we do like a lecho class, something that's not as involved because of the amount of space. I want everybody to be involved in cooking and doing things. And again, food's really important to me. And it's really one of the reasons that I'm here is because food's important to all of you too. So anyway, I'm done. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I don't know if it was life-shattering and learning too much because you're all from here and grew up on this before I ever sort of came here. So, but anyway, thanks very much for your attention and time. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for inviting me to have this talk here.
Thank you.